Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, the dreaded DM, DBJ, and of course, welcome to the channel. For those who do not know, we take a subject, and this week we're going to talk about, well, if you check out the thumbnail, pantheons. And we're going to talk about that subject all week long, and we subdivide our subject based on the day. Today being Monster Monday. Of course, we have Crunch Time Tuesday. Makes sense, right? World Building Wednesday, Third Pillar of Exploration Thursday, and of course, Future Friday. Mind you, we may not be talking about pantheons in the same context as we will be today. Also, to let everyone know, this channel is simulcast on 3 different platforms, so you can engage in the show live or check out the show later based on the platform you're engaged in. Whether you join our Discord server, slide over to down to the boiler room. That's where all the cool kids are hanging out. I'll be there as well, and YouTube and Twitch. So yeah, simultaneously, all 3 platforms. Because there's too much greatness to leave it in just one. Anyway, so the title of this week is just called Pantheon, and I thought I would title it that way a little cryptically as well, but someone suggested that we talk about the gods, and there is a recent release from Wizards of the Coast called Mythic Odysseys of Theros, which is based around the entire idea of incorporating many, if not all, of the elements, thematic elements of like the Greek gods. Now, of course, it's not specifically Greek per se, but it's super heavily influenced by that kind of interaction. And I think just because culturally, worldwide, Greek and Roman culture is a very influential type of mythological religious connotation, and deals with a lot of, it pulls on the threads of a lot of things that shape the way we look at fantasy and imagination and anecdotes and how we understand the universe. And I thought we would talk about it in tabletop RPGs. Now, today's Monster Monday, so I'm going to try most of the time I fail, try to focus more into our NPCs, monsters, adversaries, rivals, all of that kind of thing, and we'll go into more detail about other pantheonic ideals later on. But I will start this out by saying that I think one of the defaults we've done in role-playing in terms of creating a pantheon, and this is going to tie into Monster Monday, I think one of the mistakes we make is that we've gotten to the point where we think of worlds as tabletop role players by gamifying it first before we imagineer it. Okay, what I mean by that is those people that are outside of the gaming community, historians and theology, people that are into theology and mystery and such, don't categorize the pantheons the way they think of it, like we would gamify it. So what I mean by that is sometimes at a pantheon you'll hear of something like the twins or the Earth Mother or the god of rage and fire, or I don't know, the enemy brothers, or you'll hear lots of, especially in like Greek and Roman mythology, it's the equivalent of all of those really torrid baseline, lowest common denominator soap operas you've ever seen, writ large, right? Lots of sleeping with each other and jealousy and backbiting and getting involved in mortal affairs and mortals raising their fists in the air and middle fingers like F you, that kind of thing. Yeah, Tesla Ranger puts in a pops in a Pantheon about the endless. I'm not familiar where the endless comes from, but it says going clockwise, starting left, it's death, destiny, dream, destruction, desire, delirium, and despair. Ooh, I like all the D's as well. And normally they're described not by gamified effects, but they are normally described by their how they are have been accepted into the world. And sometimes those gods represent multiple, sometimes not even related functions, but they represent that function nonetheless, right? There might be a god of storm, oh, and also travel. There may be um, uh, um, the messenger god, oh, and by the way, subcategory, uh, the the god of scribing and law and communication, and like they have these other subcategories that they take care of. Oh, it's from Neil Gaiman's Sandman series. I did not. I have. It's been a long time. That's Sandman right in the middle. Duh. Doofy. Um, yes, and the what I mean by gamifying a pantheon, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, is we first think of the domains, right? Oh, there's the fire domain. There's the healing domain. There's got to be an earth domain and a law domain or something like that. So what do? Well, it makes sense to default to, well, I'll make one god for every domain. And then you end up with like 35 of them. And it's not that like a Greek or Roman pantheon doesn't have 35 plus gods in it. The problem, especially when it comes to tabletop gaming, is you're probably barely going to even touch on 5 of them. So when you go past 35, of these minor gods and demigods and lesser gods and things like that, it's, dare I say, it's a problem with us world builders because it's kind of masturbatory, right? It's look at me, look how creative I am. I'm on number 27, and I'm trying to be original. See what I'm doing? And I think one of the issues is we don't make it gamifiable. It's not something that's imported into the game. It's not something it's not a dial we can turn or twist. It's not something the players can poke and prod and kick and beat up and throw their fist at and scream at and yell and run away from and be scared of and be enraptured by or entertained. It's info dumping and information. And so let's talk about trying to incorporate that. I think one of the basest things we can do to bring the gods into our world is to make them part of the world. And part of that, and on this Monster Monday, is let them make the monsters. Give make it be the fault of the gods. And I think one weirdism, I don't know how many of you have been into the online community for a very long time, but there was a short but very prolific and one of the this was a gentleman that had one of the largest subscriber counts at it during his heyday. Went by the name of Spoonie, and the channel was Counter Monkey, and the title of his channel is called Counter Monkey, and I'm pretty sure the videos are still up. Talking about working at a gaming store, and he was at the counter, and it was like, you're the counter monkey, right? You're the one that's supposed to do all the tricks and things and everything. And the show was like kind of like me. It was him rambly talking about different encounters and that he had during his tabletop gaming experiences. And Spoonie would mention the thing that a truism across the board, but he put it into words, was that if you stat it, they will kill it. If you stat it, they will kill it. And I know this came about on a personal note when Dungeons and Dragons first came out with a book known as The Deities and Demigods, and they had stats for like the Norse gods, they had Thor and Odin. They had stats for the Greek gods. They had stats for although they were sued, and they had to do reprints of the same book. They had stats for the Lovecraftian gods. They had stats for Elric and Stormbringer Stormbringer and the gods of law and chaos in the Elric Stormbreaker series, Melanibone, whatever it's called. Yeah, I mean they had stats for that, and invariably a player would go, "Oh, it's Ares, the god of war. Huh, my character could beat him according to these stats," and so on and so forth, right? So, I think over time, us grognards just kind of like rolled our eyes at it, and then finally, Dungeons and Dragons was just like, "Listen, don't please, stop, don't stat the gods out. They just are." But I think in many ways we have a problem with the subtext of like incorporating the gods in our world, pantheons of gods in our world, and yet they don't have any statistics. And so if you're not going to do that, then I think and we also have this default to gamify it, then I think it makes sense that we tend not to make a pantheon that is incestuous, literally or figuratively, with multiple gods representing multiple different avenues, not being pigeonholed into one domain, and then not incorporating them into the world as a family of sorts, as opposed to or an entirety of sorts, rather than there is a god of fire, there is a god of death, there is a god of light, there is a god of storms, right? As opposed to, you know, the Earth Mother having this weird, you know, rivalry with the aunt of fates and healing, with, you know, the uncle of gambling and bad decisions, you know, and them hanging around and having people who are into the world where they are in, you know, literally in communication with the gods that happen to come down on Earth, and having the gods speak to the player characters and curse communities and walk the earth, and whether they are man-sized or the size of mountains, or speaking in the clouds, or acting when a lightning bolt strikes the ground, that you actually see the ephemeral image of like Thor or Zeus in the background, literally throwing a lightning bolt into the ground and seeing what happens. Because, you know, invariably, if you insert something like that in the game, our fear is that the player characters are going to go, "Oh, it's a big giant titan throwing a speared lightning bolt into the ground. I guess we'll have to fight it," right? And that may or may not be the case. Yeah, Deadman puts in the aspects of the gods from the Sandman series. Destiny, the oldest of the Endless, appears as a blind man dressed in gray or brown robes. Death appears as a level-headed young goth woman. Dream, known as Morpheus, portrayed as both lord and personification of all dreams and fictional stories. Dream as Danielle's successor appears as a tall, pale young man with white hair and a white costume. I wonder why white. Destruction, a very large, robust man with red hair who sometimes appears bearded. Desire is androgynous, capable of appearing as a man, woman, neither, or possibly both. Despair and twin sister to Desire. Had many of the same physical qualities as later form, but taller and tattooed with intricate red lines. The second Despair is a short, obese woman with grayish skin and irregularly shaped teeth. And then Delirium, the youngest of the Endless, appears as a young girl whose form changes the most frequently of any of the Endless based on the random fluctuations of her temperament. And see, that's another thing too, in terms of like the appearance of the gods, how we see them and how their appearance is. For example, this being Monster Monday, like, you know, we tend to want to give the gods a solidified physical manifestation as if they are a creature rather than the embodiment of the embodiment of something that cannot be physically manifested, like, oh, the embodiment of chaos, right? Well, a god that's the embodiment of chaos probably, it might be insanity to look upon something that's constantly changing form into things that are the impossible. And could a god like that be the progenitor of like doppelgangers and oozes and shape changers and things like that? Sure, why not combining all those together? They don't necessarily have to have the same origin, but how many times have we seen in stories where the gods have created trolls, or the gods due to, again, the most of the monsters in the Dungeon Master, most of the monsters in Dungeons and Dragons have been pulled from mythology, and guess what? Many of them were singular creatures created by the gods, cursed by the gods, cast down to earth by the gods, given birth to by the gods. Some bastardized creature that was birthed out by some mortal woman, or um, someone who dared to speak against the gods, or look beautiful, or have a skill that was better, caught up in some the after effects of some torrid relationship with the gods, and then human beings end up getting punished, or their bloodline is punished, or whatever. The Any number of stories where they are anecdotes, they are warnings for children, even, or warnings about how humanity should act. Like, for example, uh, trying to climb up to the gods and being cast down, and this is your punishment. People who raise their fist at the gods and don't want to give them honor, and then they're punished for it. The person who thinks that they could, as a mortal, compete on a godling level to fall in love, or create something that's artistic that's better than, or travel to a distant land, or fight in a competition and beat the gods and think that they could do it. And so here's a warning. And oh, here, by the way, if you don't believe me that you'll get burned, transformed, turned insane, have your body twisted, here's an example of it. And they point out someone who's diseased. See, that person did this thing against the gods. Over there in that valley, you see those trolls that live over there? Yeah, they used to be part of our family. So you need to watch yourself with your overspending, right? It's a lot of that. And does it have to make sense? Well, yes and no. And I think too often we try to make sense of how the gods act, as opposed to making them make sense like a 4-year-old. More often than not, the gods tend to have a dominion over a particular part of the universe. And unlike a human being, where we consider all aspects of things, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna go. I've got to go buy groceries, so I've got to consider how I'm going to get there, paying for it, getting those groceries back home, making sure the ice cream doesn't melt when I get back home, having a place to put those things. Oh, I have to think of my meals. Oh, I have lunch and I go to work. Should I pick up the? We think of all the when we think of getting from A to B, we go through this very, very quick process of thinking of all the ramifications of said thing. How much money do I have? Where am I going to buy those things? Can I find those things in a store? God's having the power to resist all the things in the universe. What is that? Time? Forget time. What is that? Energy? An exploding nova. Oof, sunburn, right? They don't think about those things. They go, I need, therefore I get. And all of the subparts of that. What happens when I get what I need? Am I stealing it from someone? Are people going to be exploited when I do a thing? Hey, I'm just trying to be nice. Why aren't you happy by me giving you the thing? They don't think about those ramifications. Their personalities are so hyper focused on their domain of their of their throne, right? That the side effects are often ignored. So when, much like a child, that sees an anthill and is like, I'm eating a Pop-Tart. I'm eating a toasted pastry. This is sweet. Hey, let me drop some crumbs down onto the anthill, not understanding that you're dropping, like, according to the ants, you know, 50 base tons of material down on them. And oh, while you're dropping all this material down on their home, you're literally disrupting their very way of life in terms of scavenging for food items. And all of a sudden another best friend comes over and is like, I've got a magnifying glass, I bet I could light ants on fire. And they're like, stop, I'm giving them my Pop-Tart. Don't give them a Pop-Tart, I'm going to light them on fire. And they're having this conversation over these ants, and the ants are looking up like, you, you, you do realize you're like literally changing our very world. The very way we look at life is changing by your mere presence, because one person's eating a toasted pastry and the other one's got a magnifying glass, right? um when when the god of the harvest goes, oh, my people are starving, and then decides to, oh, I don't know, I think I'll have it rain corn for 50 days, right? Aren't you happy? Maybe that's not the smartest thing, right? Or when the god of the harvest like yells at their parishioners, it's like, well, why aren't you feeding the people on the other side of the mountain valley? And they're like, godling, if I feed, those are the people that have been stealing our food. They're literally the goblinoid hordes we've been fighting for 5 generations. And the god of the harvest is like, duh, I can't hear you. I don't understand what you're telling me. I gave you an instruction. Take your food, share it with the people on the other side of the mountain. That's what you're there for. And they're like, yeah, but they'll kill us. And the godling's like, what? I still can't hear. Your mouth is moving, but I don't get it. Food, give it to them. Done. What are you waiting for? Why are you, that's how the gods sometimes act. It's like, I'm the god of fire. Why are you putting a fire out? And they're like, because it's burning our city down. God of fire is like, again, why are you putting the fire out? Yeah. like Pelora says, like, yo, sounds like your problem. Not my problem. Sounds like your problem. Yeah, exactly. And so in many ways, it seems like the gods are, well, not they are what is the term, in the hands of angry gods, right? You're fist in the air like, mother freedom, right? Pulling a little Braveheart there, right? And there's this weirdism in our role-playing community where it comes to, like, oh, I don't believe in the gods. It's like, no, the gods exist and there's physical evidence that they exist, but you can still give them all the middle fingers, all of the FUs. Yeah. Oh, I can't stand you. Go, oh, get the hell out of my. If I have to listen to another godling preach another word, I will. There's hate. There's, especially even in the classic Greek and Roman mythology, there's a hell of a lot of hate and jealousy and annoyance and like, please don't pick me today. Please don't. Oh, big sound, horns trumpeting. I pick you to go on a mission for. And the person sitting back and rolling their eyes like, oh my God, seriously? Like, we were minding our business and you had to come in here and do a thing. And one of the greatest disruptions are, well, monsters, gifts, boons to your adversaries that become very powerful, like warlock patrons writ large, right? It's the it's the it's the Achilles gift. It's the demigodhood. It's the, you were born for greater things, and the hero's like, I was born to like eat toaster pastries. That's all I want to do. And it was like, no, you are of my blood. You were expected to conquer your enemies and stuff. Dead man. That's a nasty picture. I like that. Sorry, distracted there in the Discord. But but in context, yeah. Dante's like, popped in to see you raised fist to the sky in an F note. Not what I was expecting on Pantheons. I am role playing the annoyance that mortals have when it comes to gods and pantheons, and the fact that we keep going back to the my character or I don't believe in the gods. It's like, no, you do believe that they exist. You just don't honor them. You don't trust them. You don't believe in their the pantheonic gods as um, being the end all of everything, right? A lot of them are pretty darn petty, and a great thread to pull on, of course, are trashy soap operas, terrible reality shows, and just start labeling them as the gods, right? Like, and when it comes to domains, give your gods like plenty of other domains, right? If you've got the god of jealousy, make the god of jealousy have a domain over fire, shadows, lies, um, spying, perception, something that you can't even define well, right? Like the god of eavesdropping and overhearing things, the god of copying other people's stuff, right? Having them have an intricate relationship with the other gods. Hey, my god of jealousy, again, likes to try to one up the other gods for because they're jealous of them. What kind of domain is that? I don't know. The god of duplication, maybe. Anything you can do, I can do better. Uh, sure, that's a possibility. Two storm gods? Well, no. There's one storm god, and then there's the god of jealousy, who's like, if you can do storms, I can do storms better, and constantly screwing it up. Why not? That makes perfect sense. And why I say that you can have gods with multiple domains or even contradictory domains or overlapping domains is because it's not a matter of it's because we've gamified it where we're like, well, my cleric has the power to summon a lightning bolt, right? Well, yeah, but why? Like, what does your god ask of you, and how is that power used? And oftentimes, when it comes to NPCs, is exhibited by the monsters that they create through curses, through blessings, through forcing their way of life. For example, a monster that overbreeds because the god expects their people to go forward and be fruitful, right? And what happens? This monster constantly gives seven births, and each of those births should give seven more births or something. I mean, your classic Minotaur was a an accursed creature locked away in in the labyrinth that eats human flesh, and locked away for because the gods wanted to, or the gods created it, and the humans have to deal with this monstrosity. Medusa was a person, a actual name of an individual that just happened to be too beautiful, right? And or maybe thought they were beautiful. No, they were too beautiful and they were cursed. I think Narcissia, or whatever it was, where the term narcissist came from, they thought that they were far more beautiful, fell in love with their own reflection. There was another person that carved a statue that was so grand and so artistic it came alive. Right? It's those kind of things where the gods could populate your world with not monsters that have no biological reason to exist. They exist because the gods say they exist. Right? Why are there earth elementals and constructs walking around? Because the god turn them alive as a representation of its power and let everybody know it. That's why these statues are wandering around randomly performing various acts or something like that, right? I'm the god of industry. And the druids are like, could you please stop cutting down our forests? And the god of industry is like, sorry, what? I can't hear you. Your mouth is moving, but I don't understand. As they start strip mining and building things and building bridges with um, elemental force and stone statues lifting and hauling and taking things. Why not? Why wouldn't something like that happen? And you try to stop them, maybe the statues get pissed off and they start beating you about the head and shoulders. Why? Because it's the god of industry's design. Um, Dante says, since it's Monster Monday, any tips on running a god as an encounter? It's 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 a rare thing in games I've played. I don't really know how to do it well. I feel like it would be like running a dragon NPC with intelligence. Exactly. It's um, I absolutely positively agree with you because yeah, it's such a rare thing in games. Yeah, that I've played, I don't really know how to do it well, and I did go down that pathway that I think it's rare because it's the idea of adding an NPC that you can't affect, right? Like it's it's an NPC with zero stats because you can't defeat it, but you're going to incorporate it in a game. It it runs counter to everything we know about gamifying something. You know, it's okay for us to have an earthquake. It's not okay for us to have the mountain itself start talking to the PCs, talking about you'll never get through the valley, and the PCs are like, "F you, dude, I'm going through the valley anyway." And then the, the god of you know Earth or something is like, "Ha, well, watch this," and start sending enemies against them, and literally like berating the PCs as they start going through the valley. I think that's a great story, but a lot of us, both on the player and DM side, would have a problem doing that. Like literally, a thing in the game that you cannot affect that's telling you that it's going to kill you or stop you or is jealous of you or is telling you to do something, pick another course of action or something, right? It almost feels tantamount to the DM themselves giving a big fu to the players, even though that wouldn't be the case. Um, Pillar-ist says spiders were created from a cursed weaver, I think. Arachne. Arachne in Greek, um, I'm sure it's pronounced different ways. Arachne in Greek mythology was a weaver who challenged Athena and was consequently transformed into a spider. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, spiders. Where do they come from? The gods, or maybe mundane spiders exist, but then you have these giant Strider-like things. And why? Because you thought you could defeat the fates or weave better than anyone else, and were cursed for doing something strange. Deadman says the term narcissism comes from the Greek myth about Narcissus, or Narcissus. It could be Narcissus as well, or Narcissus or Narcissus, a handsome Greek youth who, according to Ovid, rejected the desperate advances of the nymph Echo. This caused Narcissus to fall in love with his own reflection in a pool of water. Yeah, Plurals is basically don't be good at things and don't be pretty. Yeah, they get really upset about that, don't they? There's a lot of like mortal, like honestly innocent mortals. Like I'm just going about my life. Why are you bothering me? And they're like, because you look too good. Damn it, you have perfectly symmetrical facial features. Boom! Here's a blast to the face. And you're like, what? Why am I now a living ooze? You F you, there's a lot of like cursing and transformative things that mortals got picked into. And then there's a lot of infighting, right? One god's taken down to the underworld. And when the god of the harvest taken down the underworld, now that's how we explain winter. Yeah, and a lot of don't compare yourself or others to the gods. Looking up at the gods like, ha ha, man, you're so athletic. Puh, I bet you could run faster than Hermes. Shoom, Hermes shows up. What? What did you say? Nothing. All right, let's race then. No, really, I was kidding. No, we're going to race. you know, it's that kind of thing. Yep. Tesla says if the players think the GM is railroading them, nope, it's a god they've angered. See Odysseus. Yeah. Can you imagine? Can you imagine you're the player if that was a role playing game and the person created Odysseus and the DM's like, listen, I know on the map, like if you take a straight line measurement, it should only take you like a 3-day voyage to get from A to B. I'm going to make you take 17 years. 17th game session later. All right, yet another storm ravages your boat, and the player's just sitting back, palm facing, like, Seriously, dude? Yes, you come upon yet your 87th island of animals, and they are acting strange, and you think that they are human beings, and you're like, oh my god, oh, I just want my character to get back home. I just want to retire. What the it's that's my story arc. Go back home to wife and kids. What's the deal? 17 years you've been at sea. Just like, this is the most railroady what railroady quantum ogre role playing session in the world, right? Then when I get home, DM does the ultimate, like, oh, once you step on shore, your wife is killed, right? How railroady is that? Yep. Yeah. You get off the boat after 17 years and get hit by a taxi. Yep. That's Odysseus. Like, whoo, that gaming session took a long time. All right. First thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna walk back home. All right. And you see your wife stabbed. And you're just like, what? That's a little convenient, but that was one of uh, I'm being facetious, of course, but yeah, those are things that are really mythological that you can pull on. I mean, I think it's a great story element to literally have the gods speaking to the player characters in during their adventures, right? Whether it's for or against, or warnings, or where, what was it? Hermes, Mercury has been known to give warnings to heroes, like, the gods are doing this, that, and the other. Here's a little trinket from me to help you along your way, and oh, by the way, watch out by going to the north, or whatever the case may be, and then speeds off, right? Um, why not do that? Hell, how many players have played clerics and they've never ever gotten a message from the gods? They've never been in a dream sequence pulled to the realm of the gods and spoken to, or much like a Jedi, right? Going around the corner and a ghostly figure appears before them, and they sit down and have a conversation. And oh, here's a glowing orb of our thanks, and give it to them, and that happens to be their spells for the day, right? Why not? Dante says, for the campaign I recently roughed out, there was a plan for a hidden or forgotten deity that was so successfully removed from the Pantheon, the people forgot, and the gods removed all evidence. I like that. Because really, if anyone had control over what evidence and knowledge people had of the Pantheon, it would be the gods still in control. Yeah, oh yeah, rewriting history. Like, erasing things from reality is a thing that the gods could do. You know, hey, I want to do a classic dungeon crawl. Okay, the dungeon didn't exist. It literally did not exist until maybe there was one individual, one hermit who remembered the gods, and now that dungeon now exists, and for you to go into it. And why? Because there was one last follower. There is a classic art Walt Simonson. I'm going into comic books here. There's a classic story. It was a one-off by Walt Simonson. Walt Simonson was a classic Thor artist. Great art, very over the top. Tiny little ankles, huge chest, big thick neck, beefy forearms. Very over the top kind of artist. Lots of energy lines going around, and in the story, there was like this one last living person who believed in Thor. This person lived in like Norway or something. And this old man on his last days went up on a hill and prayed to Thor. And this comic book character Thor arrived and was like, and Thor was kind of surprised by it. Like, you're one of the last people who believes in me. And this old man was like, listen, all I ask is that you give me a peaceful ending. I'll never be in a battle. I'll never be a warrior, like a Viking warrior. If you could just do me one little thing and allow my life just appear before me so that I could see you, and my life will be done. I'll be happy. And Thor was like, the hell we're doing this? Boom, come! It slams his hammer on the ground and throws this dude a spear and some armor and stuff. And like he's like, you were going to war. We're not Viking. Peaceful ending. F that. And Thor takes this basically this old man, decrepit man, on a battle with a dragon, Fafnir, and they fight the dragon Fafnir in the middle of like New York City or something like that. And I really liked that story. It was it was a one off. It was one of those like story within a story. It didn't really have to do with anything. And that character has come back. That character got killed in the story, and he was proud. He was just like, like leaping through the air with his spear and stuff, and rammed it into Fafnir's scales and stuff, and gets cast aside and killed. And Thor's like, no! And then what does Thor do? Thor takes his hammer and slams the spear right into the dragon and kills it. And he gives a warrior send off to that old man, and that old man went to Valhalla. And we often don't think of like the PCs going on a mission with the gods, like the god of storms appears before the PCs, and and the god of storms is like the gods will goes before the PCs, and it's like the other gods in a pantheon will expect me, but you mere mortals, you can fly under their radar basically, and like here's a storm raven, and fly upon this storm raven, and by the way, big lightning bolt to the chest of the cleric, boom, here's just an ounce of my power, but it will help you in your battles. I will hold back the other gods of the pantheon, you go on your mission. And all of a sudden they like do this, like, are you like a GMPC going on a mission with us? And the storm god is like, hells yes. And so maybe the storm god's like literally up in the sky, battling, looking down on the PCs like, keep going, keep fighting, I hold them off. And he's like fighting with like the winds and the god of night and the god of like the sun and stuff. I mean, I think those are great elements. And why wouldn't the player characters have to defeat monsters that represent pieces or aspects of the gods, or when they're fighting the monsters in your world, that the gods speak through the mouths of those creatures, right? When they fight yet another troll, maybe that troll speaks, and they lop the head off of the 13th troll. The 14th troll's like, you can kill me, but I am the god of the god of pestilence and disease. You will never get rid of me. There's nothing you can do. My essence will spread to every living thing. Like humanity, I will spread across the world as a pestilence or something. And they kill yet the 14th troll, like, shut up. I'm going to speak to you even when you sleep. Shut up. Tesla says, going back up here, back into the Discord, Tesla says Cassiopeia boasted that Andromeda was more beautiful than the Nereids, daughters of Nereus and Doris, and companions of Poseidon. Thus, she committed hubris, and Poseidon decided to send a sea monster, either Cestus or Kestus, I think it's pronounced Cestus maybe, to ravage the lands of pronounced maybe Ethiopia, which maybe at its time was Ethiopia. Yeah, hey, there's a storm that happens to be caused by a kraken, right? There's a heat wave caused by, I don't know, Apollo's passing or something like that, or whatever. Apollo is sad because Apollo's daughter's been kidnapped. Now we have heat waves because he's riding his chariot too low. There's actually a role-playing game where it's based on the gods being real. Runes something, I can't remember. It's a 90s RPG where like Apollo literally rides his chariot across the sky each day. That's how we get daylight. And there was something about that. Deadman says the Kraken in Clash of the Titans was released because Hera was insulted because a mortal said his betrothed was as beautiful as Hera, so she demanded either she be killed, or her and her betrothed pay her everything they had. Exactly. Why? I mean, could you imagine the PCs are like, like in a major battle and there's monsters and everything, and they're like, why are these monsters still coming? And the gods are like, I want an apology. Wait, what? You okay, you sent a, a, a baker's dozen of Taras against us because you wanted some, I don't know, 13-year-old child to apologize to you? Yes, because they weren't sorry. Right? Like that's sometimes the gods are pretty damn petty. And while I think it runs counter to our better selves, right? It runs counter to the fact that like because let's be honest, we despise that kind of behavior, right? But much like watching a car accident in our reality television shows, there's something enticing about the hate that you have for people that are that petty and that narcissistic and that self-consumed with their own, well, what about me, well, what about my feelings, right? Right, and taking things far too far. What do we have today? Today we've got a cancel culture. We're going to cancel everything. We're going to go out and cancel everything. This person says something bad, I'm going to cancel them. And you're going, well, sure. There's also the idea of, oh, I don't know, ignoring them, right? No, I'm going to make everybody else ignore them and hate that person. It's like, no, you could, it's like, it's people who are like, that movie was about something I didn't like. Okay, you could, like, not see the movie and thereby not be affected by it. I don't like the fact it exists, and you take that and turn the volume up to 11, and there you have plenty of gods. Buller says, I'm waiting for a 90s style sports film where a god is coached back to greatness by the grizzled hermit cleric. You've got this, coach. Coach, don't put me in. Well, you've got this, right? Sounds like a one of your, you have to have one of your elder statesman actors being the grizzled old hermit cleric, like, come on, man, come on, get back up. Like, I don't have the fight in me, but you have to. Yeah, waking up the gods is a trope, but waking up the gods and getting them back to their, like, putting them back on their throne. I mean, what better way to have an NPC in the game that's literally immortal, can't be affected by anything, but is also completely useless, can't drown, can't be hurt, but it's just like, woe is me. I'm not the god of storms anymore. La la la. Cleric's like, get the hell up, man. Come on. I don't feel. Come on, jump across the crevice. You can fly through the air. Remember way back in the day, you were sitting on your throne in the clouds. Those were the old days. I don't know. It'd be pretty hilarious, but I think I like it. Yeah, Clash of the Titans, Wrath of the Titans was a sequel. Oh man, yeah. Tesla's like a pantheon of Karens. Ooh, yeah, shit. Very much so. Very much so. All those petty people that go off, even though they're being put on camera and filmed. And what do? They don't stop and go, maybe I should think about this. What do? They double down, right? That's the gods. They double down on their on their annoyance with some random store clerk or some random person in the park having fun with their family or whatever. Yep. Oh, oh man. Now, another aspect of pantheons to me is oftentimes we like to divide up the gods by their domains, right? There's a fire god, there's a death god, there is a god of storms, and they're divided up and are in their own camps, as opposed to the gods of a pantheon all being intermingled with a thing, right? So, for example, let's say there is a god of travel, and the player characters are going along. Maybe the god of travel, who's helping one of their, you know, greatest faithfuls, cleric or whatever have you, warlock or whatever, and the god of travel now needs to ask the god of fire for a favor, so that the god of fire does the favor for the god of travel to give that character a flame strike, right? That flame strike didn't come from the god of travel. It came from a favor because of their allegiance to the god of fire, right? Maybe they are related to each other, or they are both related and or in a romantic relationship. Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dead Man says Cestus pronounced, or Cetus. Yeah, Cetus could be it. Or it probably is it as well. There's it's my lazy tongue. There are um there are lots of different types of interactions with the gods. I think we tend to throw to the background, and I think a lot of that is, even when it comes to the monsters, right, where we tend to not incorporate that even narratively into the game. Like, for example, sure, the player characters might be fighting trolls, and the trolls have every reason to want to kill the player characters, but maybe this is because, why do we fight the trolls? Because the trolls are the embodiment of the jealousy of one of the gods against the other god, right? The PC goes along, trolls are like, you are, I can smell the god of travel or the god of storms on your blood, right? It's like, yes, I am a faithful of the god of storms. It's like, yes, but you know, um, the, the brother of storms says that your life must be ended here, mortal. And the PC is like, well, my life's not going to end here. I'm on a mission. I'm on a divine mission. And says, I know you are. I can smell it upon you. So draw weapons and let's see. Let's see which one of us, has the divine right to travel on and not pass into the lands of shadow or something. Like, you could have conversations in the world, in game, with NPCs, with dangerous powers, ghosts, elementals, dragons, monsters, giants, that are continuing the conflict amongst the gods. Or hell, they might even be speaking to each other when they get to the trolls, and they're like, the storm god's favor is upon you. It's like, I heard tell that the the god of the underworld is now in league with the god of storms, and the PCs are like, I haven't heard that. The trolls like, oh, we have, but again, we were sent on a mission to keep you from going down into the underdark, right? And into the underlands or whatever. And they're like, well, let us pass. If they are true brothers, then you are brothers just the same, and let us pass. And the troll's like, I can't leave my posts. I have had not a single word from the gods to tell me that we are in league or something like that, right? I mean, they have this drama traveling and going on with the much like a war movie where they get half a message to do a thing, but they know if they do the thing, it'll be the downfall of humanity. Yeah, the gods could be even speaking with, the mortal creatures and NPCs and player characters could be speaking like, I haven't heard from the gods in a while, and they told me to do this thing. And the other one's like, sure, but I've heard contradictory information. So what are we going to do here? We're at an impasse. It's like, well, I guess we're going to have to fight it out. Oh, that's right. The Cetus is a morph option in first edition Eclipse phase. In the Rimworld, I haven't picked up my Rimward book in a long time. I can't remember what it looks like. Bird or something. There's a one. We'll go through this later on, but I ended up pulling out my my book Within the Ring of Fire, and this is a supplementary book called The 77 Thrones. And the reason why I picked up my Within the Ring of Fire book is because um, while maybe not the most popular game in the world, it is um, self-admittedly written by an individual who, has an education in theology. And what I love about the 77 Thrones book is that there's lots of narrative in it explaining the majority of the 77 gods that are in it: gods, demigods, spirits, minor elder beings, blah blah blah, whatever their rating is. And it asks far more of them and far more of anything in Dungeons and Dragons than most games do. Like, for example, clerics in Dungeons and Dragons are no different, even flavorful, than wizards. You know, um, it's a weirdism that people are like, well, that's cleric magic, not wizard magic. I'm going, there's no difference. I use the spell happens, big deal, right? There's no there are no restrictions on the gods. I mean, and what powers that the faithful have. Like a cleric, I'm going to use my healing power. No one ever asked the question, will the gods allow you to heal that person that's chaotic evil? Or will the gods allow you to heal someone who has harmed that godling's domain in a manner in which that can or cannot be measured in mortal standards? Like, oh, the bard wakes up and takes a little cup of water and puts the fire out, and then the fire god is like, the hell you will heal him. Yep. Yeah, Pelora says 77 Throws is amazing. It's one of the best, if not the best, supplementary book around for me. I tend to agree. I honestly agree, which is why I pulled this book out. I'm going to get into why I think it is, even though maybe it's not appropriate for Monster Monday, but I don't care. It's our channel, so whatever. Yeah, Pelora says, yeah, Billy was mean. You're not allowed to heal him. Yeah. Hey, you snuffed out one of my fires there. You don't get healed. You don't. You know, did you tell the truth and I'm the god of lies? Yeah, I'm not giving you that darkness spell today. Right? Like we don't tend to do that. And again, here's yet another reason why, is because it feels like an FU from the game master, right? It feels like, oh, you're just stopping me from healing my fellow compatriot because you just don't want them to be healed, right? It's like, no, you snuffed the fire out. Well, we had to stuff the fire out. There were scouts around in the woods, and we wanted to hide ourselves so we could get advantage on our stealth checks. And it's like, the god's like, I don't care about that. You light a fire, you keep that fire going. What if it spread through the forest? Well, again, I can't. Your mouth is moving. I don't understand. You know what I mean? It's one of those things, right? So anyway, the reason why I bring up 77 Thrones is because it details a list of things, and if you need, a lot of times I like to discover other role-playing games, because the best part of flattery is theft. Right? I know it's done a different way, but you get my point, where sometimes stealing things is actually the best thing. So the reason why I say that is because they have a number of different elements. And I think if you listed these out and filled them out for your Pantheon, it could be pretty interesting, right? So before we get out of here, um, a list of things to ask yourself when designing your Pantheon. One would be, what kinds of domains does the god preside over? And I don't mean gamified domains. I mean, for example, I have a god here known as Cinder, and this goddess is known as the Love's Lady of Roses, and the dominion for this god Cinder is known as all beauty, being the object of affection, desire, disgust, elegance, extravagance, fantasy, fashion, femininity, freedom, inspiration, love, music, passion, roses, style, and vanity, all from one godling, right? Goes on to ask about parents. Okay, who are the parents of this god, if any? What number represents that god? Numerology is a very popular thing in our real world, and so numerology has a lot to do with the god. And of course, In this game, their number corresponds a lot to their throne. So number 15, it would be the 15th day of the 77 days. On the 15th day, they sit upon the throne. And so the world is shaped in that godling's image in this game world. And I like that idea. What kind of weapons do they use? What kind of gift? A gift is like not power, but an aspect that the god gives to people who are devotees. Like, for example, her gift is music. So maybe your god has a gift of the god of travel has a gift of direction. So the followers tend to have a very good sense of direction. Maybe they are just a little bit better at survival, or they're a little bit better at finding, you know, hunting and gathering of like nuts and berries that are good for them rather than finding something that's poisonous, right? It may just be maybe they're good at carpentry, or the people there are able to guide themselves by the stars, or they have very good speaking voice, or they happen to be physically endowed in some kind of way. Maybe they can run fast, or happen to be strong, or very tall, or you know something about them is the god gifts them or finds people with those gifts, therefore they become followers of that godling. What else do they ask for? They ask for a symbol of that god, holy symbol or whatnot. um, Servitors is another thing. Lots of gods have avatars and monsters and creatures that serve them, and so those services might be very important to the god. Why do the trolls serve the god of beauty? Maybe is it so that the god of beauty is always reminded that they are the most beautiful thing, or are they served by the most beautiful creatures out there? Which one of them? um yep. Tesla puts in a ton of archetypes, such as like primal forces, such as like creation, destruction, order, chaos, fate, prophecy. And even those, like, for example, primal forces of creation. Is construction creation? Maybe. Is it the creation of physical things like art, like carving statues? Maybe the same thing as well. So an artistic person and a pragmatic bridge builder might, or even a shipwright, might both be under the same godling. Same thing for like abstract natural forces. Yep, birth, death, undeath, light, darkness, air, fire, the sky, animals, spring, summer, fall. Specific natural forces like dawn, twilight, night, sun, moon, and stars. Yep, north, south, east, and west, thunder, mountains, flowers, deserts, forests, snakes. And again, when it comes to things like snakes, is it physical snakes? Sure. Is it snakes like you're a liar? Is it snakes with poison? Like you're inserting yourself into other people's lives, you can poison their people's opinions of them? Why not? Abstract societal concepts Tesla puts in, like art, beauty, dance, being a guardian. What's some other really cool? Judgment is another one. Being a maiden, messengering, oaths and pledges, prosperity. Yeah, things that you can't really like. They're super abstract. Um, Going back into within the Ring of Fire, they ask for sacrifices. And sacrifices don't necessarily mean like I pull something out of my pocket and sacrifices. In this book, it talks about the things you shouldn't be doing, right? Like in here, some of them have sacrifices of like being shaven, or you're unable to touch dead bodies, or something of that nature. Of course, there's also prayers, like how prayers are done. Like she prefers prayers performed in the late morning. Some prayers are done by yourself. Some are done in a group. Some are done with like song and dance, or you done while high on drugs, flaying of your flesh or something. There's also omens. How are messages sent to your faithful? Are there messages written in spider webs? Are they fever dreams when you sleep? Are they birds that fly through the air in certain formations? Or like, is it looking into the fire? Game of Thrones, right? Look into the fire and get an image of something. Like, how are omens? How does a faithful see an omen where other people just pass it by and don't see anything? Um, Also about clothing, ceremonial dress, what kind of churches they have, if any. It could be a natural element. It could be something built. It could have no adornment, or it could be require extreme value for a church. The name of their day. In this, there's 77 thrones, so there's 77 days. And each day has the name of what they preside over. Like, for example, for this goddess, Cinder, her day is the day of elegance. And so is there a day that god is honored honored on high? And in a pantheon, when you have people who believe in a pantheon, like, yeah, you don't have to worship Apollo, but when Apollo is high in the sky, people are just like, they look up and they're like, oh, thank goodness Apollo's riding through the sky. Thank you for driving the rain away from the god of storms, right? Zeus or something. Talks about holy text and dogma, as well as like avatars, images, and each of these gods has something known as the 9 acts of irreverence. These are things that you shouldn't. These are like the sins of that god. Like, for example, for Cinder, it's failing to aid the cause of love, or believing you are more beautiful than Cinder, or trying to convince others so, or failing to indulge courtly love, or failing to acquire funds for the church, or tolerating that which disgusts you, or failing to look your best when you are having a proper time. These are things I think sometimes we ignore as restrictions on clerics, and the clerics themselves wouldn't look at them as restrictions, right? To them, it's like, oh, of course I would live this way. It doesn't bother me. Whereas the people around them might be bothered by it. Like, why are you walking around the camp 3 times again? Like, because I'm blessing the place. Why aren't you walking around 3 times? How much bad luck have you had? So anyway, guys, I've gone over just a bit, but I do have to get out of here. Thank you very much for joining me. I will let you know that there is an actual play on the channel known as Bleak Storm, and that is a series of actual plays for a setting known as, in a book known as A Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin. So please check that out if you would like to see me DMing and judge me harshly. So anyway, guys, I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you very much for supporting the channel, and please like, share, subscribe, spread the word, become a follower, that sort of thing. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we still will have the interview with myself, with Dave from Nerdarchy, coming this Wednesday. So look out for that as well. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. Gotta get out of here. I'll see you later. Bye. Thank you very much for watching.